And we are live. Hi, folks.
Hey everyone.
Hey, we are back on the live stream. Let's see if this is coming up. It should be. So there is this little bit of a 30-second lag, so you can start popping up the questions in there. Yeah.
Thanks, Matteo. So we've just seen you showing us everything about Platformatic Client, which is pretty exciting. It went out in the latest V019 release of Platformatic, now available on NPM. So yeah, I've got while we're waiting for some questions from people, I've got a few questions of my own. And one of the things I was wondering about the new client, I've just been taking a look at it, reading through some of the docs that you've written in the blog post, is kind of, you're talking about this problem of services communicating with each other. And that's the kind of problem you're trying to solve, right?
Yeah. Pretty much the problem that I'm trying to solve. I'm also trying to monitor with an eye. So if you look at me, that I turn my head here, is that I'm trying to monitor the status of the stream and how green it is. So I'm just going to do this little bit of a magic. So let's see if I can keep responding to your questions as well as maintaining an eye on the stream so that everything works smoothly. Right now it should be. It should all be good, but let's see. So the question is, so Platformatic Client, it's all about the connecting to other services and reusing them. It's based on a few key principles. Like the first one is that you're going to use Fastify. So, and this is, I don't know, it seems like a given, but in order to be able to load your client correctly inside your application, you need somewhat something that looks a lot like the Fastify plugin system. So it's based on Fastify. So essentially, our client can be used standalone, but we offer a concept of a native Fastify plugin, so that you could, for example, have custom per request authentication and headers for the external call, and so on and so forth. So it's this is, I think, one of the main starting point. And doing these, it's actually a lot of work. Like writing one of those clients by hand, it's hundreds and hundreds of lines of code, and for just one service. And then you need to have, once you start building your application, you have 3 or 4, and now every team is re-implementing them, and everything goes to the brown smelly thing. It's the proverbial fan, and the work you are going to implement the same thing 5 times. It's horrible. So
it's tough, and it's really hard to maintain as well, right? Because you've implemented all these different API clients, and then you've got to keep them up to date. And if you find out another team changed their API but you don't know, you've then got an emergency bug fix to get in before they do their release. These kind of things, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
So that's pretty tough. So we've got a question here from Cass in the chat. They said Platformatic makes it super easy to create services and open API and GraphQL on top of data entities. Can we expect some real-time interfaces, WebSockets, server-sent events in future, or is the idea to use Fastify plugins for this type of interface?
So I'm so glad you asked. This is one of my favorite topics. So a few bits. So the first thing is we have full support of GraphQL subscriptions. So you could use GraphQL subscriptions right now to implement WebSockets. Okay, GraphQL subscription is an abstraction over WebSockets. So you can go ahead and just use that, and it will just automatically work out of the box. In fact, if you want to, you need to disable it, to be honest. So if you don't want it, and it's also work on Platformatic Cloud. So you have a super fast pub subsystem already built in, essentially. So it's kind of amazing, to be honest. There is still work to be done on that component. So there are a few things that I want to add, but it's pretty solid. It's been battle tested and it's part of the Mercurial suite, so it's fantastic. But right now, if you want to build your own custom WebSocket endpoint, you will need to build it on using a Fastify WebSocket and just implement it on top as inside your plugins. So
Cool. So So I was just going to ask, with the WebSockets there, it's a case of dropping in that plugin, and because Platformatic apps support, any Fastify plugins, you've got the full access to the Fastify server instance effectively. It means that you can go and use Fastify WebSockets, add any custom functionality. It's no different from creating a Fastify app by itself, right?
Exactly that. It's fantastic, to be honest.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you for the question, Cass.
Oh, that's one of the. That's a great question. And by the way, we just added the WebSocket support in Platformatic Cloud for this specific release. So it didn't work before this release. In fact, I had to do a few good fixes into our HTTP gateway for getting that over the line. And it actually was actually tricky. Okay, you can there is these PR that you can see and you can see when I was working at it. So it was last week, and this was, I'm passing the PR. So
oh yeah, great. Drop that in the chat.
Yeah.
So this is just to clarify, this is WebSocket support for GraphQL subscriptions. Is that right?
WebSocket support in general, so in Platformatic Cloud.
Oh, in general. Nice.
So these powers. Yeah, and it was great. I was supposed to do a stream with Salma White Panther today on Fastify WebSockets and Platformatic Cloud and deploying things there, but unfortunately, she had a personal issue, and we had to reschedule to a foreseen date. So we'll see what that will come up with.
I'm looking forward to seeing that. That should be great.
Yeah.
So just going back a little bit more to Platformatic Client, we were talking just now about the kind of problems that commonly come up when you've got a bunch of different microservices trying to get them to communicate with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so can you talk us through a little bit about how the Platformatic Client helps with that when it comes to generating, say, for example, we've got a GraphQL API. What kind of steps are we going to go and run through to actually make sure that we can use that in our other services?
Okay, so the first one of the greatest thing about building APIs, and one of the most important part, is using publishing them with a schema. You want to have your API, your HTTP API, with a schema attached. So you need to define your GraphQL endpoint, and you need to define your OpenAPI endpoint or OpenAPI schema. And with those, you can actually start building very interesting things on top. And we are going to do a lot more in the future in terms of building an ecosystem around these kind of interactions. So expect more. I'm not going to unveil too much in the future, but of what's coming. Okay, but stay tuned, because we're going to announce some very interesting things on this topic in the next few months. So so the process is actually very straightforward, as I showed in the video. You take the schema, and then you pass it through this generator that essentially validate that the schema is what it is. It should be, or OpenAPI or GraphQL, essentially. And then it basically downloads the schema, put it in a folder, and that's what was going to be used for every other processing later on. And the client itself only runs at runtime, so it just created when the process load. It's not a huge burden, to be honest, and it makes things so much easier in terms of maintenance. So you don't have to maintain this massive blob of generated code. what is generated is only the types and the automation for your development. So it's kind of great. It's also so that's it. You take the schema, you point it to the generator, and then you can just use them. You just need to specify, and the generator will also change your platformatic .db.json or service.json configuration, and everything will work correctly.
Great. So what we've got here is that with that schema you were talking about, the Open API definition, if we were doing it with a REST API, when that gets then pulled down, if we're generating a platformatic client, and then automatically a bunch of files are generated, including the types, so we can go and load. But also there's the option, I think you were mentioning, about being able to use the platformatic client programmatically. And so we don't even have to run that CLI command if we don't want to.
You will lose the types, so which I think is a pretty powerful feature. Or in other terms, I spend a lot of time to generate those types and learn a lot of things on how to generate types programmatically and what actually makes sense. And it provides a good DX for the author of those types versus other stuff. And I've learned a lot of Java TypeScript too, which is, I'm currently doing Matplotlib, of course, to learn more. Anyway, sorry for the complete promotion of somebody else. But so basically we are generating those types, and you can look at the code. It's actually very interesting and straightforward. And it uses a library called Code Block Writer. Very simple. We just do string concatenation, nothing super fancy. And rely on tests to verify that the output that they generate is actually valid TS. And I love it. It just works for me. And so you lose the types, but you can just use the client normally. So you don't need to do anything. You don't even need the local schema. So you can just download it at runtime. So will just work.
That's amazing. And I think the really powerful part about the types is not only do they, if you like TypeScript and writing your applications in TypeScript, of course, Platformatic has out-of-the-box support for TypeScript, and then all those types will then flow into your application, and you'll be able to use them when you're using the Platformatic clients. But also, even if you're not using TypeScript, those types can still be of a benefit to you, right? Because your IDE, say VS Code or Vim, should be able to pick up those types, give you type hinting, autocorrect, and you can use JS.comments, all that kind of stuff. So that kind of like hybrid, not quite TypeScript, somewhere in between, no build step type thing, no compilation. That's quite a nice way. I know that some people are pretty keen on using.
Amazing. Okay. So no, it's look, it's really, really fantastic, to be honest. I really love it, and it's been took me, like, the PR for this was like 9,000 lines of code, and the user interface is just I'm just creating a client with a command and it just works. Okay, but the underlying bit is like 9,000 lines of code, changes over 100 files, which is bananas from my point of view. Like, it's so thin,
but the end result looks amazing. So to everyone watching, we hope you'll go and give Platformatic Client a try. I'm going to drop the blog post in the chat from yesterday, which Matteo published. And that shows you a little bit about how Platformatic Client works. We've obviously got the video, which we debuted earlier this morning, and that gives you kind of a deep dive into how the Platformatic Client works and how you can go and use it in your applications. But please come and give us feedback over on Discord or on GitHub, discord.gg/Platformatic. You can find us there, and we'll be happy to help. Anything you want to say before we wrap things up here?
Tomorrow, Simon is going to do a deep dive on the new cloud features. So he's going to do, there will be I think it will be another recorded video, because otherwise things will be awkward. So, to avoid any streaming issues that we had last time. We had no streaming issue today, so I actually understood the problem and fixed it. So I am actually very proud of my streaming setup. So and
Nice debugging.
yeah, we did debugging. So on somebody else's system. So it's pretty fun. And so there will be this thing. So you can actually get. So basically, Simon will do the work. Unfortunately, I don't think I will be there for the Q&A, but hopefully Luca will join Simon for the Q&A at the end. I might be in the background. Unfortunately, tomorrow it's not a great day for me. I need to do some personal stuff, but that was unexpected. But everything will be fun and fine. So I'm very happy to. I'm very happy that we can have this. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Matteo. And yeah, as Matteo said, I'll see you all tomorrow for my deep dive on Platformatic Cloud. Thanks, everyone. Okay. See you then.
Bye. Bye-bye.